there are some progressive spaces where things will blur to the point where it's like, are you making a sexist joke, a misandrist joke, a transphobic joke, or are you ironically referencing the bigotry in all three in order to make something legitimately funny that isn't prejudiced at all? If you're in a progressive enough space, I think the answer is that it doesn't matter as much, which is the good ending, right? Because the good ending is one in which we have like a general faith in everyone else's politics. So we don't need to worry that something that is funny but could be dicey. We don't need to worry like, oh, is this potentially bad or harmful, you know? We're not there yet, broadly, of course. Though some spaces are definitely further along than others.
Yeah, like completely true.
Well, that's why it's something conservatives tend not to understand. But they think that being on the left is, being snowflakey or being overly sensitive. Don't get me wrong, very much the case in plenty of places. But there are spaces on the left where there's almost like you almost achieve like the dream that I would have had as a 13-year-old white boy of like an almost like, I don't want to say like a post problematic social space because that's not really a thing, but an environment where you can think, okay, I know everyone here is cool, so I can like tell all these funny jokes that might be interpreted more poorly in a different environment. You see this selectively all the time. Trans stand up comics will make tons of trans jokes. Jewish stand up comics will make tons of Jewish jokes. The Boondocks are full of anti black jokes made by left leaning black, creators. So I think everyone kind of wants to end up there to an extent where we can be self deprecating and be more flippant. It's just a matter of to what extent are we facilitating really bad social politics, which is, of course, unfortunately, a lot of what happens with some people who watch the Boondocks come away from that thinking like, oh, haha, funny black people, or we see with Dave Chappelle, or like those Chris Rock bits that he discontinued, or it's possible for it to just end up not, like it ends up leaving the target audience.
Yeah. I will say I also kind of engage with or engage in like, ironic misogyny because I think it's funny as me being one of the loudest feminists like in our friend group, me being like, "Oh yeah, but no, I'm a stupid woman, right?" and like making fun of my friends for, trying to just be normal, you know? It's funny. It does also, matter from who that comes from, you know? I remember watching someone doing a interview on, I forget who it is exactly, but it's one of those completely ironic people who just never stop trolling. Just that's their whole bit is that they never give up the bit, and I think that that's a part of this kind of dynamic is that you do have to give up the bit once in a while because if you don't, then it is just being bigoted. That is just the joke. Is that you believe in this bigotry, and the people that are laughing believe in this bigotry. So you do have to like at least set some kind of common ground to show that actually no, I think those guys are weird. I'm making fun of how weird and absurd it is because I don't really believe in this stuff.
At the end of the day, this is stuff that it can only really be remediated in like a friend group or in a very strictly controlled social space. Even I push the limits with my live stream, you know? Like I feel like my humor is interpreted in its appropriate context when I make jokes that are like ironically misogynistic, because a lot of ironic misogynistic jokes, for example, can be self-deprecating when done by a guy. Like for instance, if you've messed up in some way or made a mistake or are in error, and then you reflexively blame a woman, in a progressive space, the interpretation can be the joke is he's a guy and he can't handle that he was in the wrong. So he makes a joke about, like about something that a woman's done. Like as just a very basic example, Um, but again, like that stuff can be misinterpreted so easily. I think you need to have crackdowns on that as well. Like if you see people going overboard or like maybe missing the intended point of the joke, you can try to like hammer it in. I had that problem with the triple parentheses because like Nazis will, when they want to indicate something as Jewish control, they'll put it in triple parentheses called echoes. Um, and the funny thing for me is that like neo-Nazis they're retards. They're very stupid. So everything they don't understand is Jewish controlled. Everything. They stub their toe on a curbside and that curbside has the echoes around it. They're totally undiscerning. Everything is Jewish to them. Um So people in my chat would put, I would say like, oh yeah, sorry, stream is late. I got held up. There was this one guy in traffic cut me off, and then they put that in the echoes, like the one guy in traffic. Like, well, he's part of it too. And I mean, I do find this very funny. Because the joke is at the expense of the Nazis who use this, so like broadly. Um, but then eventually it got diluted to the point where people just started putting the triple brackets around everything, where it was no longer they were making fun of the Nazis. They were now just doing the thing the Nazis did. There was no longer any material distinction between the bit and the reality. And at that point, we just banned people who did it, as the people in chat are about to find out if they keep it up. If a joke is funny, you can shame me for this, fine. A lot of people do. If a joke is funny, I can accept it being a bit problematic. Humor is one of the few things that we have, okay? Everything's falling apart. Like, we have some humor. If it's a bit problematic, maybe a bit actually sexist or whatever, like, okay, fine. But if the joke isn't funny, then but there's still some like racism or sexism or whatever, that means then the point wasn't, okay, I'm gonna be a bit problematic, but the joke's gonna be a banger. That wasn't for the humor. It couldn't have been for the humor because it's not funny. It must have been for the bigotry. And that's what you see in all these far right groups. You go to Stormfront, and it'll be all these people telling black jokes. And are these jokes funny? No, they're just racist. They're deeply unfunny. I don't think they're laughing at it either. They're using the humor as a delivery mechanism for the racism. So if a joke is funny, I can at least believe that a sacrifice was being made for a greater purpose, making people laugh. But if there's no humor, then it's like, okay, you're just using this as an excuse. You know what I mean?
That's horrible, but that's also really funny.
It's a metric that, no, legitimately, you'll find it. You listen, go online and you'll find, the left and the right. Tally up how many sexist jokes you can find. You'll find some on both sides, far more on the right, but still. The ones on the left, you're going to see much more precision with the comedy. The ones on the right, they just like the sexism. The humor is incidental.
It might also have to do with the amount of effort that's being put into, the comedy, because it's like, if the joke is just, oh, I hate XYZ minority, then it's like, okay, funny, we've heard that one before. I mean, you have to be a little bit more creative, but maybe like, the point that you're making is that like on the left, it's a little bit more complicated because people actually do put that effort to still, you know, quote unquote make that sacrifice. I
Well,
don't.
I think we have an intuitive understanding of this as well, right? Because if you can imagine like a black guy in a mixed social setting, right? I think that most of them, at least in the conversations I've had broadly, would understand the difference between like a white uncle in his 50s making some joke like, well, what's the difference between a black guy and a pizza? A pizza can feed a family of four. Like, I think you can, some like canned bullshit like that. I think you can immediately write that guy off as like fucking racist ass boomer piece of shit, whatever. Like it's easy to make that write off. But like if you can imagine like something more well delivered or more well thought out, like something, I don't know, like a fucking Boondocks joke or something. I'm trying to think, can I think of like a white comic who's made a good black joke? I think fuck. I don't have a good memory for this. But yeah, anyway, just broad metric. It's like, well, why was the joke being made? Was it being made to make people laugh or to sort of test the waters on the limits of acceptable bigotry? And I think that's what has to be worked out. You can see this too in the Discord channels as well. There are some people, it's like, okay, wow, thanks for the sexist joke. You made 50 in the past hour. Like, what are you getting from it at this point? Like, you must just like being sexist, and then you can call them on that. But I'm just rambling at this point.